In the summer of 1983, a group of factory workers in a small Midwestern town vanished without a trace. On a seemingly ordinary day, they clocked in for their shifts, unaware that they would never return home. As hours turned into days, then weeks, the community was plunged into a state of disbelief and heartache. Families were shattered, and the search for answers became a haunting echo through the years. The names of these missing workers became synonymous with mystery, their stories fading into the background of a town desperately trying to move on. For 25 long years, the fate of these individuals remained an agonizing enigma, clouded by the passage of time and the weight of unanswered questions. Then, just when hope seemed all but lost, an unexpected discovery would reignite the flames of investigation. In a dilapidated warehouse hidden beneath layers of dust and neglect, a ledger was unearthed. Its pages yellowed and fragile, yet its contents electrifying. Within the confines of that ledger, the names of the vanished workers were inscribed, alongside cryptic entries that hinted at a darker underbelly to their disappearance. This startling revelation would serve as the catalyst for a renewed investigation, compelling one determined family member to take matters into her own hands. Meet Sarah Jenkins, the sister of one of the missing men. For decades, Sarah has lived with the weight of uncertainty, her heart aching with each passing year. The unanswered questions have lingered like shadows in her mind, fueling an unyielding desire to uncover the truth. Now, as the pages of the ledger begin to unravel the past, Sarah finds herself at the center of a storm, one that will challenge everything she thought she knew about her brother, his colleagues, and the very fabric of their community. What could possibly explain the disappearance of not just one, but an entire group of workers? Could the key to their fate lie hidden in the depths of the ledger? Sarah's journey begins with skepticism from those who have long since moved on, dismissing her inquiries as the delusions of a grieving sister. But Sarah refuses to be silenced. Each lead, each name, and each entry becomes a piece of a puzzle that she is determined to solve. As the investigation unfolds, dark secrets begin to emerge. The apparent normalcy of the factory hides a world of intrigue, betrayal, and danger. What was once a place of labor now reveals a sinister undercurrent, where alliances are tested and loyalties are questioned. Sarah soon realizes that the truth behind her brother's disappearance is not a simple tale of misfortune, but a complex web of deception that entangles more than just the missing workers. With each step she takes into the shadows of the past, the danger grows. Sarah must confront not only the ghosts of her brother's life, but also those who would prefer that the truth remain buried. The ledger may hold the key to their fates, but it also poses a threat to those who believe their secrets are safe. In this first chapter of a harrowing tale, we witness the resilience of a sister's love, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the chilling realization that the past is never truly buried. The hidden ledger has opened a door, and as Sarah prepares to step through, she knows that the journey ahead will be fraught with challenges. She must summon the strength to face a world she never imagined existed, a world where the lines between right and wrong are blurred and the truth is a dangerous companion. As we delve deeper into the story of the vanished factory workers, we will explore the details of their lives before their disappearance, the impact on their families, and the chilling revelations that await Sarah and her quest for answers. Can the ledger truly lead to justice, or will it lead to more questions than answers? Join us as we uncover the layers of this mystery, one name at a time, and reveal the dark secrets that have lingered for far too long. The journey is just beginning, and the truth, no matter how painful, must be revealed. As Sarah delved into the ledger, each name felt like a ghost pulling her deeper into the shadows of the past. The factory workers, once vibrant with dreams and aspirations, had vanished without a trace, leaving families shattered and communities haunted by unanswered questions. Now, their names, written in faded ink, held the promise of a breakthrough. But with that promise came a chilling sense of foreboding. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah began to reach out to the families of the other vanished workers. She organized meetings, creating a support group that would become her lifeline. As they gathered in homes and community centers, she listened to their stories, each one a tapestry of love, fear, and loss. Together, They shared memories of laughter and hopes for the future, only to be crushed by the silence that followed their loved ones' disappearances. However, as the group began to coalesce, a new layer of mystery emerged. Sarah discovered that some families were hesitant to speak openly, their eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and fear. Whispers of a cover-up began to surface, hinting that the workers might have stumbled upon something they shouldn't have, something dangerous. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, and Sarah felt the weight of responsibility pressing upon her shoulders. With the help of a local journalist, Sarah learned about the factory itself. It was a place shrouded in secrecy, with a reputation that had shifted from a bustling workplace to a site of rumored illegal activity. As she dug deeper, she found reports of strange accidents, unreported injuries, and whispers of unsafe practices. The ledger seemed to connect to something larger, a pattern that could reveal not just the fate of the missing workers, but also expose a darker side of the community that had chosen to look the other way. Yet skepticism was everywhere. Many in the community dismissed her inquiries as the ramblings of a grieving sister. Even the police, once eager to crack the case, had all but forgotten the workers. They suggested Sarah focus on moving on, but she refused to let their indifference extinguish her resolve. The ledger was a flicker of hope, and she was determined to fan it into a flame. As she ventured further into the investigation, Sarah received an anonymous tip that sent a chill down her spine. A former factory worker, now living in a different state, claimed to have seen something that could change everything. But when she attempted to reach out to him, she found that he had gone missing too. The walls began to close in around her. Who could she trust? The danger was becoming palpable, and Sarah realized that pursuing the truth could lead her down a treacherous path. As the investigation continued to unfold, she could feel unseen eyes watching her, waiting for her to make a misstep. Just when she thought she was drawing closer to the answers, a message arrived, a cryptic warning demanding she stop her inquiries. The threat was clear. Someone wanted the past to stay buried. But in her heart, Sarah knew she could not turn back now. The ledger had revealed a flicker of truth, and she was determined to uncover the darkness that lay hidden beneath. With every name she crossed off the ledger, Sarah felt the weight of the workers' spirits urging her forward. The investigation was growing more complex and the stakes were rising. Who was behind the threats and what were they willing to do to protect their secrets? The confrontation was coming, and with it, the revelation of a truth that could shatter everything she thought she knew. As Sarah delved deeper into the ledger's implications, she began to uncover connections that both fascinated and terrified her. Each name was a thread in a web that spiraled into the shadows of the factory's past. Some had been listed with annotations, hints of clandestine dealings that hinted at a life beyond their roles as mere workers. Others had addresses, phone numbers, and even fragmented relationships that seemed to weave together a story far darker than a simple disappearance. Sarah reached out to families of the names she had found. Many were hesitant, their faces etched with years of loss and resignation. Some had long ago accepted the mystery of their loved ones' fates, while others clung to the hope that answers might still exist. With every conversation, Sarah felt a sense of urgency. The workers had been more than just a group. They were individuals with lives, dreams, and families who deserved to know what happened to them. But as she continued her inquiries, the warnings became more intense. An anonymous message flashed on her phone, a simple phrase: "Leave it alone." This time the threat felt more personal. Fear began to seep into her resolve, whispering doubts that perhaps she was stepping too far into dangerous territory. Yet the faces of the missing haunted her dreams, driving her onward. She decided to confront the factory's former foreman, a man who had long since retired but was rumored to have known more than he let on. He lived in a quiet town, hidden behind a white picket fence that belied the darkness she suspected lay within him. When she arrived, Sarah's heart raced as she knocked on the door, unsure of what to expect. The door creaked open, revealing a man whose face was lined with the weight of unspoken truths. His eyes darted nervously, as if he were weighing his options. Sarah introduced herself and explained her mission. With every question, she watched him closely, searching for signs of guilt or hesitation. Would he reveal the secrets that could unravel the mystery, or would he guard them jealously? As the conversation progressed, she sensed his discomfort growing. He attempted to redirect her inquiries, speaking vaguely about the past, downplaying the disappearances as mere accidents or unfortunate circumstances. But Sarah pressed on, her determination unwavering. She mentioned the ledger, and at that instant, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Those names were never meant to be found," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. In that moment, Sarah understood she was on the cusp of a revelation. There was more to this story than just the missing workers. There were echoes of deceit that could implicate powerful figures in the community, and it was becoming clear that some would go to great lengths to protect their interests. Before she could press further, a sudden knock on the door interrupted them. The foreman paled, panic washing over his features. "You need to leave," he urged, casting a glance towards the door. Realizing the gravity of her situation, Sarah stepped back, knowing that the confrontation she had long awaited was now unfolding in ways she had never imagined. As she turned to leave, the foreman's voice trembled behind her. "They don't want the truth to come out. You're in danger." The warning hung heavily in the air, and as Sarah stepped outside, she could feel the cold grip of fear tightening around her. The forces at play were more formidable than she had anticipated, and they were closing in. The deeper she dug, the more she realized that the truth was a volatile entity, and uncovering it might cost her everything. As Sarah navigated the dimly lit streets, her mind raced with the implications of the foreman's warning. She had unearthed a hint of a dark conspiracy, but the shadows of danger loomed larger than ever. With every step, she felt the weight of the past press upon her, a past filled with unanswered questions and unresolved grief. Determined to piece together the fragments of the story, Sarah returned to her research. The hidden ledger was just the beginning. She needed to find out who had access to it, and more importantly, who might have wanted to keep its contents secret. Hours turned into days as she pored over old newspaper articles, interviewed anyone willing to talk, and scoured public records. The community she had once called home now felt like a labyrinth of secrets. Then a name emerged, a former manager at the factory, a man known for his authoritative demeanor and a reputation that danced on the edge of intimidation. He had been a prominent figure during the disappearance and had since vanished from public life. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Could this man hold the key to unlocking the truth? With a surge of adrenaline, she set out to find him. The investigation led her to a dilapidated house on the outskirts of town, overgrown with weeds and shrouded in neglect. As she approached the front door, her heart raced. What would she find inside? With a deep breath, she knocked. Silence hung in the air, thick with tension. Just as she turned to leave, the door creaked open, revealing an older man with wary eyes. His expression shifted from surprise to suspicion in an instant. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice gravelly and defensive. Sarah held her ground, her determination bolstered by the weight of the truth she sought. "I want to talk about the missing workers. I have questions about what happened." His reaction was immediate. The door began to close, but Sarah wedged her foot in the threshold. "Please," she urged, "I need to know." For a moment he studied her, and she could see the wheels turning in his mind. Then with a resigned sigh, he stepped aside and let her in. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of dust and forgotten memories. As she took a seat at the rickety kitchen table, she could feel the tension crackling between them. "I don't know why you're digging up old bones," he said, avoiding her gaze. "It's not worth it. Some things are better left buried." But Sarah pressed on, her voice steady. "The ledger mentioned your name. You were involved. I need the truth." He hesitated, the weight of her words hanging between them. Just as he seemed ready to speak, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house, making them both jump. Fear flickered across his face, and he glanced towards the sound. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered urgently. "They'll find out." Panic surged within Sarah. Who were they? What was he hiding? As she opened her mouth to press further, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approached, heavy and deliberate. Time seemed to freeze as the door swung open, and in walked a figure Sarah had not expected. The moment brought a jolt of recognition. It was a former police officer, one who had once been part of the investigation into the disappearances. His presence sent a chill down her spine. "I thought you'd be smarter than this, Sarah," he said, a smirk creeping across his face. "You really don't know when to let go, do you?" The atmosphere thickened with dread, and Sarah's instincts screamed at her to flee. She was now entangled in a web of danger that extended far beyond the missing workers. The truths she sought were coming at a steep price, and as the walls began to close in, she knew the next step would be the most perilous yet. Fear gripped Sarah as she stood frozen in place, the former officer's smirk revealing layers of hidden knowledge. She could sense the urgency of the moment, but a whirlwind of emotions left her momentarily paralyzed. The man before her had once been a protector, a guardian of the law, but now he felt like an adversary, a specter from a past she was desperate to unravel. "Why are you here?" Sarah finally managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with defiance. The officer stepped closer, the air thickening with unspoken threats. "It's simple, really. You're digging into things that should remain buried. The past isn't something you can just unearth and expect to walk away from," he warned, his tone chilling. Sarah's heart raced as she considered her next move. Each second stretched into an eternity, and she knew she had to keep him talking. "What do you know about the disappearances? Why were you involved?" He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in the dimly lit room. "Involved? I was merely doing my job just like everyone else. Some things are meant to stay buried. You have no idea what you're messing with." The implication behind his words sent shivers down her spine. It was becoming painfully clear that whatever had happened to the factory workers was far more sinister than she had imagined. If the officer was still defending this secret, it meant there were powerful forces at play, forces that would stop at nothing to protect their interests. With a sudden surge of bravery, she pressed on. "I don't care about your threats. I'm not letting my brother's name fade into obscurity. He deserves justice, and I won't stop until I find it." The officer narrowed his eyes, a flicker of surprise cutting through his bravado. "You should reconsider," he warned. "This isn't just a case anymore, it's a matter of survival." Just as she was about to retort, the sound of footsteps echoed again, this time outside the house. Sarah's heart dropped. Who else was here? She had already come too far to back down now. The officer seemed to sense her resolve, his expression shifting from smug to something more serious. "Listen to me, Sarah. If you continue down this path, you'll be putting more than just your life at risk. You might just expose truths that certain people would kill to keep hidden," he warned, his voice lowering to a near whisper. His words hung in the air, heavy with foreboding. As the footsteps grew closer, Sarah's mind raced. She had to act fast. There was no turning back, no backing down from the abyss she was peering into. She needed to gather evidence and understand what the officer was truly hiding. "Who are you afraid of?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. He hesitated, and in that moment, a crack appeared in his facade. "You don't want to know," he said, before stepping back toward the door, his gaze darting toward the sound outside. In a split second, the door burst open, and two figures stepped inside, their silhouettes imposing against the light. Sarah's heart pounded as she recognized the dark uniforms. They were from the local police, but their demeanor was anything but friendly. "Step away from her," one of the officers commanded, eyeing Sarah with a mixture of suspicion and authority. As the former officer raised his hands, a smirk returned to his lips. "Looks like you're in over your head, Sarah. I'd suggest you take their advice," he said, before slipping out the back door, vanishing into the night. Sarah's mind raced with dread and determination. The pieces were beginning to align, yet the danger was far from over. The new clue she had unearthed was not just a lead. It was a signal that she had tapped into something larger, something that could expose a dark reality that many would kill to conceal. With the police now in the room, the stakes had been raised. They had questions to answer, and she had to find a way to get through to them. But deep down, she feared that the closer she got to the truth, the more perilous the journey would become. Now she had to tread carefully, for every step could lead her closer to danger or perhaps to the revelation she so desperately sought. The tension in the room was palpable as Sarah stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. The officers exchanged glances, their skepticism evident as they assessed the young woman who had dared to disturb the quiet of a case long buried. "Miss Hartman," one of them began, his voice low and measured, "we've received several reports about your recent activities. You're digging into a case that has been closed for years. You need to understand that this isn't just a simple disappearance." Sarah's resolve intensified. "I know it isn't just a simple disappearance. I've found something. Something that changes everything." Her voice trembled, but held an unwavering strength. The officers leaned in slightly, intrigued despite themselves. "What do you mean?" "I found a photograph," she said, pulling it from her pocket. It was hidden within the pages of an old book in her favorite reading corner. "It shows my sister with a man I've never seen before. They're smiling, but there's something off about it." One of the officers took the photograph, inspecting it closely. "And you think this man has something to do with her disappearance?" "Not just him," Sarah replied, a chill creeping up her spine. "I've uncovered connections to a local organization. They're involved in more than just charity work. I believe my sister got too close to something dangerous." The officers exchanged another glance, skepticism mingling with concern. "You realize that making these kinds of accusations without evidence is dangerous, right?" "Dangerous? You think I'm worried about danger?" she snapped. "My sister is missing, and you all have done nothing. I need you to understand that this isn't just about her anymore. There are people who will do anything to keep the truth hidden." As the words escaped her lips, the air in the room shifted. A realization dawned on the officers, but it was the kind of realization that came with the weight of an unsettling truth. "Sarah, if what you're saying is true, this could be bigger than we imagined," one officer finally admitted, his voice softer now. She felt a flicker of hope. "Then help me. We can't let this go. It's not just about finding her anymore. It's about exposing the corruption that kept this case buried." With that, she began to share the details she had uncovered, each piece a fragment of a sinister puzzle. The officers listened, their initial doubts fading as they realized the gravity of the situation. This was no ordinary case of a missing person. As Sarah detailed the organization's ties to her sister, a chilling connection unfolded. They might have been running something illegal, using unsuspecting people for their own gain. "My sister might have stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to see." "Are you suggesting she was silenced?" one officer asked, his tone serious. "It's a possibility," she replied, her voice steady despite the dread creeping into her heart. "But if we don't act fast, we may never know the truth." Just then, a sudden sound echoed through the room, a phone buzzing. It was one of the officers' devices lighting up with an alert. "We need to check this out." "It might be related," he said, turning to leave. As they stepped out, Sarah felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The truth was within reach, yet lurking in the shadows was the very real threat of those who wanted to keep it hidden. The investigation had shifted gears, but with every revelation, Sarah sensed the danger closing in. In a world where trust was a luxury, she had to rely on her instincts and the small team she was slowly building. What would they uncover next? And would they be ready for the dark secrets that awaited them? As the stakes grew higher, so too did her determination to uncover what had truly happened to her sister. The journey toward the truth was fraught with peril, but Sarah Hartman was ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Sarah and her small team gathered in her living room, the air thick with anticipation. The revelations from the ledger had sent ripples through their lives, igniting a flicker of hope that had long been extinguished. But as they pored over the details, the reality of their task weighed heavily upon them. The names in the ledger were not just statistics. They were people, lives intertwined, all abruptly severed 25 years ago. With every mention of a name, Sarah recalled the faces of her sister's friends, the laughter they shared, and the dreams they had. It was this personal connection that fueled her resolve. "We need to find out who recorded this ledger," she urged, her voice steady. The group nodded in agreement, their expressions mirroring her determination. As they dug deeper, an unsettling pattern emerged. Each name linked back to the factory, a place known for its harsh working conditions and a history of alleged cover-ups. Sarah's pulse quickened. The more they uncovered, the more she sensed that the factory was not just a backdrop to the disappearances, but potentially the very heart of the mystery. "Let's reach out to former employees," one team member suggested. "They might have insights that can connect the dots." This seemed to strike a chord, and the group agreed to split up, each taking a different lead. Sarah decided to follow up on a lead concerning a maintenance worker who had been employed at the factory during the time of the disappearances. As she approached the man, now elderly and hesitant, she felt a chill. His eyes darted nervously, as if he were reliving a haunting past. "I can't talk about that," he muttered, his voice shaking. "It's too dangerous. You don't know what you're getting into." But Sarah pressed on, refusing to back down. "Please, just tell me what you know." "My sister. Her life matters. They all mattered." His gaze softened momentarily, revealing a flicker of empathy before he hardened again. There were things happening in that factory. Things no one was meant to see. Before she could ask more, he backed away, fear etched on his face. "You need to forget about this. It's better for you." And with that, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving Sarah with an unshakable sense of dread. Returning home, she felt the weight of his warning. What truths were hidden in the darkness of the factory? As she reviewed her notes, a chilling thought crossed her mind. Was someone watching her? That night, as Sarah lay in bed, she replayed the day's events, her heart racing. The fear of what lay ahead was palpable, yet the need for answers burned brighter. She needed to find more witnesses, more clues, but each step deeper into this mystery felt increasingly perilous. As dawn broke, Sarah received a text from one of her team members, a single message that sent a jolt of adrenaline through her. "I found something. It changes everything." Her hands trembled as she typed back, urging for more details. The uncertainty loomed, and Sarah knew that whatever this new revelation was, it would either illuminate the path to the truth or plunge her further into the shadows of a conspiracy she had only begun to unravel. With every passing moment, the stakes grew higher, and with them, the danger surrounding her. She was determined to follow this lead, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something, was closing in on her. The walls of secrecy were tightening, but Sarah Hartman was not ready to turn back. The truth awaited, and she was willing to confront whatever darkness lay ahead to find it. As the sun climbed higher, Sarah met with her team at a small cafe, the chatter of patrons providing an almost comforting backdrop to their tense conversation. Her colleague Mark arrived, a man with an eye for detail and an instinct for the unexplainable. He slid a folder across the table, his expression grave. "Here," he said, voice low. "You need to see this." Sarah's heart raced as she opened the folder, revealing a collection of photographs and documents. Among them was a faded image of a group of men, their faces obscured by shadows but unmistakably familiar. Each man bore a striking resemblance to one of the factory workers who had vanished. "Where did you find these?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark leaned in closer, his voice barely audible above the clinking of cups. "They were buried in a storage unit owned by a former factory manager. It looks like he was involved in something much bigger than just the factory's day-to-day operations." Sarah's pulse quickened. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together, but the implications were staggering. She had stumbled upon a connection that could potentially link the disappearances to a larger web of deceit. "Did you look into him?" she pressed, her mind racing with possibilities. "Yeah, and that's where it gets even more unsettling. He was never formally charged, but rumors circulated about his ties to organized crime. Some say he was a middleman in illegal dealings. This could explain why those men vanished without a trace," Mark replied, his brow furrowed. Sarah's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Could the factory be a front for something sinister? She needed more information, more evidence to draw the threads together. "I have to talk to him," she said, determination hardening her voice. Mark's eyes widened. "Are you serious? He's a dangerous man, Sarah. You can't just confront him." I have to, she insisted. If there's even a chance that he knows something about what happened to those men, I can't walk away. They deserve the truth. As they continued to sift through the documents, a growing sense of urgency filled the air. The clock was ticking, and each moment spent in hesitation only deepened the shadows of the mystery. The closer Sarah got to the truth, the more she felt the weight of unseen eyes upon her. That night, Sarah sat alone in her office, piecing together the fragments of a story that had long been buried. With each revelation, the darkness grew more profound, and the potential danger loomed ever closer. The ledger had opened a door, but it was the shadows lurking behind it that filled her with dread. Just as she began to formulate a plan to approach the former manager, her phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. Her heart sank as she answered. "Sarah Hartman," a low voice said on the other end, chilling her to the bone. "You're digging in places you shouldn't. Back off or you'll wish you hadn't." The call ended abruptly, leaving her staring at the screen, her breath caught in her throat. The warning was clear, but so was her resolve. The deeper she plunged into this investigation, the more perilous it became. Yet the truth was now tantalizingly close, and she couldn't turn back. Tomorrow, she would confront the former manager. With this new lead, she had no choice but to face whatever darkness awaited her. The shadows were closing in, but Sarah Hartman was ready to shine a light into the depths of this chilling mystery. The next morning, Sarah Hartman steeled herself as she prepared to meet the former factory manager, a man whose recollections could unlock years of silence. She arrived at the dilapidated building that had once thrummed with the energy of workers, now silent and haunted by memories. She could feel the weight of history in the air, thick with unspoken truths. Entering the office, the faint scent of stale coffee hung in the air. The former manager, Carl Emerson, was already there, a weary man with deep-set eyes that hinted at secrets he had kept for too long. She introduced herself, maintaining a calm demeanor, but inside, her heart raced. "Mr. Emerson," she began, her voice steady. "I'm here about the workers who disappeared in 1983. I found something." Before she could finish, he cut her off, his expression darkening. "That was a long time ago. Let it go. It's better for everyone." His dismissive tone ignited a spark of frustration within her. "I found a ledger with their names. It suggests there was something sinister happening at the factory." He shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the door as if weighing his options. "You don't know what you're dealing with. Some things are best left buried." A moment of silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Sarah pressed on, feeling the urgency building inside her. "I need to understand what happened. Those families deserve answers." Carl's facade cracked ever so slightly, revealing a flicker of fear. "You really think you can handle the truth? There are forces at play here that you can't begin to comprehend." Her resolve only strengthened at his words. "What forces? What are you hiding?" Just then, a loud knock echoed through the office, sending a jolt of panic through both of them. Carl's face paled as he quickly moved to the window, peering out. The tension escalated, and Sarah felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "I have to go," he said abruptly, turning back to her with urgency. "You need to be careful. The people involved won't take kindly to you digging around." With that, he rushed out, leaving her alone with her thoughts, the weight of his warning settling heavily on her shoulders. She glanced at the ledger tucked away in her bag, a tangible piece of the puzzle that she could no longer ignore. The clock ticked ominously as Sarah contemplated her next move. It was clear that Carl Emerson was terrified of something, perhaps of the very truth she was desperate to uncover. She had a lead, but it was one fraught with danger. Determined, she left the factory and drove to the library, where she could research not just the factory, but the lives of those who had disappeared. As she scoured through old newspapers and archives, a chilling pattern emerged. Reports of odd occurrences, mysterious accidents, and even whispers of organized crime began to surface. Every article seemed to point to a larger, more sinister web woven around the factory, a conspiracy that could have ensnared those workers in a way she never imagined. Sarah could feel the pieces coming together, yet the risk grew ever greater as she ventured deeper into the shadows of the past. Her mind raced with questions as she pieced the fragments together. Who were the true players in this unfolding drama? What were they protecting? And most importantly, how many more lives were at stake? As evening fell and the library lights flickered in the dimness, Sarah felt a resolute determination surge within her. She was closer than ever, but the confrontation loomed ahead. The truth was waiting, just beyond her grasp, but she could sense the darkness gathering around her, threatening to swallow her whole. Tomorrow would bring her one step closer to the heart of the mystery, and she braced herself for whatever it would reveal. The following morning, Sarah awoke with a sense of urgency. The weight of her discoveries pressed heavily on her shoulders. She knew she had to confront those who had kept the truth hidden for so long. The ledger was more than a list of names. It was a breadcrumb trail leading to a much darker reality. Her first stop was the factory itself. Abandoned for years, it loomed like a ghost from the past, its walls echoing with the memories of the workers who once toiled within. As she stepped inside, the air was thick with dust and silence, a stark contrast to the bustling environment it had once been. She could almost hear the laughter and camaraderie that had filled the space, now replaced by an oppressive stillness. With her heart pounding in her chest, she began to search for any remnants of the past that might hold further clues. Old photographs, equipment, and records lay scattered, telling a fragmented story of the lives intertwined within these walls. Each item she uncovered felt like a whisper, urging her to dig deeper. But as she explored, a sense of unease crept in. The factory had become a place where shadows danced among the remnants of a lost era. Sarah felt as though she was not alone. A sense of being watched prickled at the back of her neck. She brushed off the sensation, focusing on her mission, but the feeling lingered, stoking her anxiety. Days turned into weeks as Sarah tirelessly pursued every lead. She interviewed former employees, the few who were willing to speak, but their responses were often vague and laced with fear. They hinted at a culture of silence, an unspoken agreement to protect the factory and its owners. Whispers of intimidation and threats hung in the air, making it clear that those who dared to question were met with swift consequences. With each passing day, Sarah felt the walls closing in. The more she uncovered, the more dangerous the investigation became. Late one night, as she pored over documents in her small apartment, a phone call shattered her focus. It was an anonymous tip, a voice barely above a whisper, warning her to stop digging or face dire repercussions. The call shook her to her core, but it also ignited a fire within. She understood that she was onto something significant, something that those in power wanted to keep buried. The thought of her loved ones, the families of the missing workers, fueled her resolve. Finally, she stumbled upon an old news clipping tucked away in a dusty file, a photograph of a factory manager, a man whose name kept surfacing in her research. The photo showed him shaking hands with a known mobster, a figure intertwined with illicit activities that echoed through the town's history. As she connected the dots, the chilling realization hit her. The disappearance of the workers was not merely an accident or a case of negligence. It was a calculated move within a larger scheme, one that involved corruption and possibly murder to protect interests far beyond the factory floor. With this revelation, Sarah knew she was close to the heart of the mystery, but it also meant she had crossed a dangerous line. The path ahead was fraught with peril, and she could feel the tension tightening around her. The confrontation was imminent, and she would need to gather her courage for what lay ahead, facing those who had built their empire on the backs of the lost, and who would stop at nothing to keep the truth from surfacing. Sarah had long since moved past the initial fear that gripped her when she first uncovered the hidden ledger. Now, determination fueled her every step. The photograph of the factory manager and the mobster haunted her thoughts, weaving a narrative of collusion that could no longer be ignored. Each day she scrutinized the newspaper archives, seeking any additional information about the manager's ties to organized crime. It was a labyrinth of deceit, but Sarah was relentless. She reached out to former employees of the factory, hoping to find someone willing to share their secrets. Many were hesitant, their eyes darting as if fear still lived within them, but a few whispered about the undercurrents of violence that often surrounded the factory's operations. Then, one fateful afternoon, she received an anonymous tip, a name that sent chills down her spine. An associate of the factory manager, known only as Frankie, was rumored to be in town. Frankie had always been the enforcer, the one who ensured that no one spoke out. Sarah's heart raced. If she could find Frankie, she might uncover the truth behind the worker's disappearance and the shadowy dealings that had kept the case buried for decades. As she prepared to confront Frankie, Sarah felt a weight settle over her. She was now a target. Her every move was being watched. She recalled the words of a former factory employee who had warned her, "The past doesn't stay buried forever, but those who dig too deep often pay the price." The sun set, casting long shadows as she made her way to the bar where Frankie was rumored to frequent. Anxiety coursed through her veins, yet she clung to the hope of finally getting answers. She stepped inside, scanning the dimly lit room until she spotted him. A man with a hardened face, nursing a drink alone in the corner. Sarah took a deep breath, ready to confront a man who might hold the key to her quest. Would he reveal the truth, or would he silence her like so many before? As she approached, her heart thundered in her chest, every instinct screaming that she was walking into the lion's den. She had come too far to turn back now, but would the truth she sought lead to justice or to her own undoing? Frankie's eyes met Sarah's, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as if the weight of the world hung in the air between them. The confrontation that followed was tense, filled with unspoken accusations and buried secrets. As Sarah laid out her discoveries, the fear that had once consumed her began to transform into an unwavering determination. Frankie, cornered and exposed, shifted in his seat, the facade of indifference crumbling as the truth seeped through the cracks. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that Frankie's silence had been bought with threats and lies. He revealed a shocking narrative. Her loved one had stumbled upon a dangerous plot involving illegal activities, and those responsible had made sure she would never see the light of day again. The revelation struck Sarah like a thunderbolt, yet it was the key that would unlock years of anguish. With this newfound evidence, Sarah approached the authorities once more. This time, their skepticism was overshadowed by the undeniable weight of her evidence and the credibility of her relentless pursuit of the truth. Slowly but surely, investigations reignited, leading to a cascade of arrests that shook the very foundation of the community. The shadows that had loomed for decades began to recede, revealing a web of corruption that had stifled justice for too long. As the last of the culprits were taken into custody, Sarah stood before the media, recounting her journey. She was no longer a victim of circumstance. She was a beacon of hope for others who had suffered in silence. The pain of her loss would never fully dissipate, but she felt a profound sense of justice, a cathartic release that marked the beginning of healing. In the aftermath, Sarah reflected on her journey. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the unwavering quest for truth, and the painful realities of loss. She understood now that justice is not merely about punishment. It is about the truth being brought into the light no matter how dark the path may be. As the story of her loved one echoed through the community, Sarah urged others to remember, every disappearance leaves a wake of unanswered questions and unending heartache. But through courage and determination, even the deepest secrets can be unearthed. The past may not stay buried forever, but the truth, when sought with perseverance, can illuminate even the darkest corners of our lives. In a world often shrouded in silence, let this case remind us that no one should have to seek justice alone. As Sarah walked away from the podium, she carried with her a message of hope. The truth may be painful, but it is the first step towards healing.